Hello and welcome back to Danger Aware Animation Department videos. And in this video, I've been working on the Bugillagers, which is the Danger Aware characters for the Funshine Toon Time amusement park. And they're the main characters, and of course they have their own cartoons, and that's what I'm trying to build here. And if you've read our comics, you know that there's a rocket build project happening. And here is the color version of that, and I'm working on this. I'll just show you real quick what I'm working on. I'll jump you ahead to where there's some actual action here. And so here you can see that the rocket is partially built. What I've done is I've put the rocket over here, and then I'm moving it piece by piece to come over here. Now, I don't know if you've worked with Moho very long, or if you're working with Moho such as I am, which is on a laptop, which it's got an AMD 3 processor, so it's fairly powerful. But when you start putting Moho to its limits, it becomes very noticeable. So in this image you can see a lot of elements, all these ground and these grass leaves sticking up out of the ground, these little sprouts, and the debris and sticks and stuff. And that takes a lot of processing memory to create each of these objects. And if I needed these objects to be moving, they would have to be individual objects. But what I've done is I built my background first, and then I captured that background as a static image, and then I imported that image to this scene. So if we come down to the bottom here, you can see all these parts for the rocket. There's a lot of activity happening here, but all of this is one image, and that saves me a lot of memory in the activities that are happening in this animation that I'm building. So I didn't need these leaves to be moving in the wind, or these sprouts moving, or anything like that. But in fact, the sprouts are part of the scene, the active scene. So if I turn off the background, you can see these little sprouts are here in the front, and that's so that I can drive the wagon behind the sprouts. Okay, so if we back up a little further here, let's go to 1200. No, I think, oh, I moved the wagon back to the beginning. So here we go. We can watch the wagon coming in. So you can see that it's rolling behind all those sprouts. And when we turn on the full scene, it gives us the semblance that we are actually driving on the landscape. Okay, so we've got it going between the debris and the sprouts, between the rocks and the sprouts. So a little work, and it'll look good, but that's not what I'm working on here. In order to create a background, that takes a lot of work too, and I wanted to come up with a way that we can create a quick and easy random background without spending hours and hours and hours to create a brand new background every time we need one. So what I have done is I've created a bunch of various elements. So here's blades of grass. So here I have, I don't know what to call it. It's a generator of imagery. So we need blades of grass, but we don't want them all lined up in a straight line. I've got them from various sizes all the way down to the same size as one of our insect characters. So this size here represents the ant character size. So we're going to stick symbol ant right next to this to make his size the proper size. But these other leaves, they grow large compared to an ant. I mean, they could get literally 10 feet tall in some cases. But I've kept these down to just a few inches relative to the ant's character size. So now, we need to generate a bunch of random grass leaves. But I don't want to use this. That looks too static. So we're going to go into our animation. You can see I've got a number of bones here. And I've set these all up as control bones for all of these grasses. I've taken 3 different sets of grasses, so every third or so grass is attached to this set. The next set is the middle ones, and then final, all the rest of them are this one. But each grass has a different number of bones. So this grass has 5 bones total. And the first grass only has 2 or 1 even. I can't remember. Actually 2. So this grass has 2, and that allows me to manipulate the grass by, bending it over and all that. But I didn't want to do them all individually every time I wanted to create a grass scene. So I broke them up into 3 groups right here. Then this allows me to move the grasses left and right and up and down into different patterns. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to grab the manipulate bone tool, and you can see I can move the grasses move in and out of each other this way. So we can grab and say, okay, let's use that kind of a pattern. And then we can slide left and right, and that not only moves the grasses left and right, but it changes their positioning compared to each other as well. So you can have it bunched up this way, or spread all out, all kinds of different ways. You've just got to play with the different things that I've done here with these black grass blades. So once you've got exactly what you want for their positions, well, they all still kind of look kind of stiff. So we can go in here and manipulate these bones, and as you can see, some of the grasses are going to move and distort to whatever I'm wanting from just moving this one set of bones here. And so I can do that on all of these various grasses using these control bones. So now we've got a grass scene. We can control R to render it. Well, let me start first with why is it so wide and long? Well, I went into project settings, and I went to high definition first, but then I changed the width and the height so that it's 9,000 pixels wide by 1,000 pixels high. And that is good to produce a rendering image. So we're going to control R to render. And you can see how long it takes to render just these grasses. So if we had to render the whole scene, you can imagine how long that's going to take. But now we've got our grasses, so let's just save these as a PNG with a transparent background. And we're going to go into scene 1, and we're just going to save it. Now I've already done sand and clouds, so now we're going to just save blades of grass. And we're going to close this, and then we can open up our next object in the scenery. And so we go back to Bagillagers, and here, so that was blades of grass. We've already got clouds. So let's go ahead and do debris. So here is a debris setup, very similar to the way the grass was, but a little more complex. On the debris, what I've done is I've set up 2 different groups of debris, and each group has its own set of bones. And as we go into the animation, we can now move each of these sets back and forth so that we can get either a heavy debris or light debris. And I extended it beyond our capture screen, which I'll probably redo the grasses to be just like this, where we've got a lot more variance on the grass. So now we can build what we want our look to be for our debris, and say, oh, well, we want a path through the debris. Well, you can do that with this. You just bring these 2 like this and leave a gap between them just like that. And so now we've got debris, so we can control R and capture that debris. And as you can see, there's a lot of debris, a lot of little objects there. It is going to take a long time to render. And this applies also when you're animating. The more objects you have in your animation work, the longer it's going to take to render your final project. If you take static items that don't get animated and capture them like this, and then save as a PNG, and we're just going to go into scene 1, and now we're saving our debris. So we can close this, and then we're going to open up the next object, which is our foreground, so the ground far away. So there we go. And again, it's the same as with the debris. You go into the animation layer and you can manipulate the bones to create whatever style of background, far off background you want. And you can bring them up, down to create exactly what you want. And these levers change the curvature in that background scene area. So if we bring up the other one, and we can change the curve there. So you can go from jagged, sharp rocks to curved, and to over curved where you get back to jagged again. So a lot of variants just right there. Create any background. You can go in and change the style color. So if we go into style and go to the ground color, it's a gradient, so you'd have to come into here and change it. So we can come into gradient, pull up that background color, and go, oh, let's make it a little lighter, and there we go. So now we've got a bit more background. So we're going to capture that with a render that out, Control R, and that was pretty quick, which is the whole point of this, so that we can quickly make each of the elements that we need. So we save that here and close it. Then we've got the next element is going to be the midground, and of course it's very similar. A little bit more curves, a little bit more detail, a lot more points. And so again, you simply go into the animation layer, go into the bones, and manipulate till you get the scene that you want. So we want some craggies, we can do that. So there we go. So now we go Control R, we render that out. And we go into our scene folder and save it. Alright, and so we close that. And now let's get the next one, which will be the foreground. So we go into the bug illagers and the near ground. So again, this is like the others. The color's slightly different, lighter, and there's many more points, many more crags. It's going to be a lot more variable because it's up close. We're looking at closer up details, so we might want to have a lot more detailed on the foreground ground that we're using. And we can go up and down and create different layers, or we can just drop one down and just use the one layer. It's whatever you need and want at that moment. It's easy to create. So now we render this, and we've got the foreground here, so we save as PNG, go into scene and save. Now, I mentioned this before in other videos. I have a spinal column implant, and that implant causes my right finger to jump and click every once in a while when I'm trying to click the left. So if something weird pops up or the mouse goes the wrong way, it's because of the spinal implant I've got that sends out electrical signals and keeps me from controlling my hands as well as I would like. So now we're going to go for sand. Now the sand one, oh, this one's extreme because I made so many different grains of sand. And again, remember, we're talking about insects. So you can see how long it took just to load that. So look at all those sand grains. So this is what I'm talking about. To get those grains of sand in my scene, every one of those things is taking up specific amount of memory for every point that is on every grain of sand. And every grain of sand here is an individual object. And I've got them, you can see they're overlapping, but when you take them and individually, each set of sand, there is no overlapping. So these are individual grains that will only be on this layer. None of them overlap. You get in close, you can see that there is, they may touch, but there is no one on top of the other. But when we add the second layer, now we've got elements that overlap each other. So sand can be very, very sandy, like a sandy beach, or we may just need just a few grains of sand. So again, we go into the animation layer. We decide, okay, how much sand does this scene actually need? And so then we can adjust these to bring in only what we need for our scene. Again, we can make a path through the sand by altering how much sand shows and leaving a gap between each of these different layers. So each layer is 64 positions for the sand here. So I can put the sand in 64 different places, up and down, 64 places, left and right. And the other one changes the edge of the sand. So as you can see, the ones on the group for the left, they're now thick. And so we can do the same on the right. We can thicken up the edges of the sand or thin them out. So we can make our sand grains like that. Because there's so many objects, things are very slow reacting, which means I zoom in and out way too quickly. Like I said, trying to get this many grains of sand into a scene as individual objects is going to slow everything down, exactly as you see is happening with just the sand. So let's thin this sand out a little bit, like that, and we'll make it less thick-edged, so it's just a light smattering of sand particles. And there we go. So Control R to render and capture. And you can see it's taking a long time. And you can equate this amount of time that it's taking to render a single image. This applies to your animation. If we were trying to render each of these grains of sand inside of an animation, every cell produced is going to take this much time just to render the sand. This is why we want to create a random producer of sand where we can capture a static image and use that static image. But it's 9,000 pixels wide so that we can use it and pan and zoom the scene if we need to without being stuck with just a single static scene. I'll show you that in a moment here. This is still only half rendered. It's still rendering the other half. So this is the first set of sand. And I'm still waiting. When it finishes, we'll get the, system ding, and then the save as button here will pop up. And the fact that I'm getting this left right arrow cursor. There we go. So now it just finished. So we can now save as, and we just save in our scene our random sand output. So now we're going to close this one. And also, keeping all of these windows open in Moho takes memory. So if you're not using something, it's best to go ahead and just close it out once you're finished with what you're captured. And we don't need to save it, because this is just a simple, we generated our image and we captured it, we're done. We don't save those images unless we want to save that scene. And even so, because it's only an element of the scene, we wouldn't worry about it as what it was, because we've captured that static image. So again, we don't want to save. So near ground we don't need any longer. Mid ground we don't need any longer. We don't need to save it. And there we go. So now we've just done sand. We don't need it. And that is taking a lot of memory. And so now we can open up the next element, which is debris, I think. So open. And we just did sand. Oh, sprouts and then sticks. So I already did debris, yeah. So here's sprouts, which are these sprouts in the front. Now, you may want to place sprouts. You may want to leave them to bring into an actual animation, which is what I've done in the rocket build. And so, again, we just create the random field of sprouts that we want. We render it. Again, there's a lot of objects. The more objects you have in a project, the more memory it takes. The more memory it takes, the longer it takes to render. And we can zoom out a bit so we can see. There we go. So you can see it's rendered the one side, and now it's rendering the objects on the other side. Again, it takes a long time. Every single point in your project has to be calculated, whether it's on the display or not. So the fact that there's so many blades or little sprouts that are off the image, they're still there in the project. They still are taking up memory, and even though it's not rendering them out for our image, it still has to eliminate them from the final display, and it has to calculate each of them for how big it is, where the points are, and is this in our current display area. So a little bit longer here, and we should get the other half. Here we go, I think. Well, as you can see, this is taking quite a long time to render. And you just have to wait it out. There's really nothing you can do to speed it up, which is the whole point of what I'm doing here. You can't speed up the rendering of all this stuff except to render it and capture it as a single image, because a single image takes much less memory than the individual objects inside of an animation project. It's not that the object itself takes a lot of memory to store in the computer. It's the calculating of those points and distances, the scale that you've got your settings at, the whole thing. It's all part of the whole process. And there we go. So we finally got the rest of it. So we can go save as and PNG, and now we're going to save our sprouts to our scene. Then we're going to close this, and then we're going to pull up sticks. And there's going to be more objects. We're going to have logs and objects and other things. So this is just to get things started easily and quickly so that we get a quick background. I mean, this is not super quick. This is taking quite a few minutes to produce the background, but it's still faster than trying to create each of these items individually to create a new scene. So here we go. We've got these little twigs and sticks. Again, same thing. We can move them back and forth and pick how many sticks we want, how many we want overlapping. We can bring them up and down so we get different portions of different groups of sticks. The only overlapping happens with the two different groupings. So yeah, you can have sticks laying on top of other sticks, and this will let you do that, but you can also keep each one separate so that you can do what you need with it. So there we go. And again, we can change the thickness of the edges of the sticks, which changes the way the sticks look, and we can do that to both sides there. So you can have some heavy sticks and some light sticks, or heavy and mid-heavy, or whatever it is you're looking for. So once we've got that, we render that out. So there's our sticks scene portion. Let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And there we go. So the sticks rendered quite quickly because there's not as many objects, not as many points in the actual project. So now we're going to go to scene, and we can save our final part of this scene. So now we need to assemble our scene. So we can close this, and we're going to go File, New, and then we're going to import each of those objects. So we're going to bring them those images. So we're going to start with our foreground because it's the furthest back. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit more because this all started when I did this to build mountains. So here I've got a mountain builder. Oh, I'm in importing. So let's see. Do I have mountains here already produced? No. So let me cancel this and let me open the mountains, and we'll create the full background. So I went in, and not only this individual scenes, in the beginning I started to build a full big background. So in the first thing you're going to deal with is background mountains. So here we go. So, and I don't want that cloud. I was trying to do that cloud to begin with, but I've eliminated it by creating other ones. So let me just go ahead and get rid of this out of this project. And that was the cloud I was making from an actual cloud formation. It looks like a dog. But anyway, let's get rid of that because I don't need it in this project any longer. So this is my mountains creator. And as you can see, it's quite a bit more complex than the individual parts that I did just now, because I was going to try to put it all into one. And again, you run into memory problems. You run into everything getting slower and slower and slower. So here is my mountains background scene, the very farthest background for the Bug Illagers comics. So if you want to see mountains and the stars and the sky, we can do all of that. So if I was to turn all these labels on so we can see what each of these bones do, let's go to the scene and then select the bones. and then turn on the label. So now we can zoom in and we can see that we've got the sun left and right, the sun up and down, the moon left and right, the moon up and down, and the moon phases. And then we've got stars left and right, stars up and down, the sunrise, sunset, the angle of incline of the sunrise and sunset. Then we've got mountains, group 1, left and right, mountains up and down, mountains 2 left and right, mountains 2 up and down, hills left and right, hills up and down, fields up and down and left and right, and forest up and down left and right, and hills, islands up and down left and right. So each of those allows me to change this background. Now this one is capturing a scene as if we were in a completed image, but we can change that very easily by going to project settings. So let's do that here. Right there, get my fingers to work. So you can see I'm in Ultra HD to begin with. That's fine, but we're going to turn off this, and then we're going to change our camera to 9,000 wide, and let's go 2,000 high. So it's more memory, but we get a larger capture. So there we go. So yeah, as you can see, that capture is actually capturing a little bit beyond our sky, but we're just going to zoom everything in a little, just like that. And so now we're good to go. Let's do that, and we'll bring our camera view up just a bit. Let's go back out a little. I think we're zoomed in too close. So we'll go right about there. Alright, so now I'm going to create a background. So we're going to go into the first frame and scene, and then we can pick each of these bones one at a time. And so we can do the sunrise and sunset here. So we can manipulate it and we can change how much of the sky is dark. Oh, that's the sun left and right. So here is our sun. We can move it left and right and up and down. So if we wanted the sun in the scene, we could put that in there, or we can have a setting sun. Right now we're not going to use the sun. I want a nighttime vision. So here we got the moon, and we can move the moon left and right wherever we want it in the sky. And if you zoom in, there is some detail on that moon. So there we go. And then we can change the phase of the moon here. So say we wanted a 3/4 moon there. So there we've got our crescent moon, just like it should be in the sky. And then we want what stars we're looking at. We can change those stars, moving them left and right, or up and down. So get whatever star field we like. I've put in some quite large ones, but I don't think we need to use those like that. If we do, we can. We don't need to, but it doesn't matter. It's just a static background that we're creating. So now we've got sunrise, sunset. This changes how much of the sky is dark. So we go all the way to the left for sunrise, and we got to get it just right. So there we, oh, that's the darkness. So sunset, and then we can scroll the other way. I guess I've got it backwards for daytime. So of course we want blue skies, but we can have white skies as well. And then it's tilted because we've got the angle incline. So we can change how much the angle of the background of the sky is, and even rotate it completely around upside down so that we've got the sun rising coming from this direction. So we could do a rising sun effect, or dusk, or whatever you need. So And with the stars, if you don't want stars at all, there is a way to bring them all the way down and get rid of them out of the sky. So we've only got the daylight part of the sky showing there. Looks like we got one little star. Oh no, that's not a star, that's our crosshair. Okay, so yeah, that gets all the stars out of the sky. And then we've got the mountains. So this is the center of the mountain range, but we can move the mountains back and forth, and the mountains in front of that back and forth, and just create any particular scene that we desire on the go, bringing these fields over and the forests, which are way distant forests, and then any close-up hills, or if you need an island, I threw in these little things there. So this is how we can produce quickly and easily random scene. And as you can see, there's a lot of objects here, so it's going to take a bit to render. Let's bring it down. So it's already rendered the sky. There's the moon and the sun. The first mountain, second mountains, hills, trees, and voila, here is our main background. So now we're going to save this as PNG, and we go into our project, which was Bagillagers, and then scene 1, and we save this mountains here. So now we close this. We can close this project. We're not going to save the changes, and now we can bring in everything here one at a time. So we start with the mountains image, and we bring that in to create our scene. So now we can zoom in and out to make it where it's filling our scene. So let's do that. And there we go. We've got our variable scene. We can pan across, many different places. So it's not just a static background. We can start here on frame 1 and then jump to frame 2000 and drag this across like this and then play it, and we've got a moving background. The mountains themselves aren't going to move. The moon itself isn't going to move that much during any animation. Therefore, having this as a background that moves slowly like this, we can pan across the scene, and we can now bring in the other groupings, the other sections. So let's go ahead and bring this up a bit, like this. So we've just got the moon in there, and now we're going to go back to the home construction layer, and we're going to bring in the other elements. So they're all images now. So the next thing we want is the foreground. So there we bring that in, and we simply pick it up by its layer and put it exactly where we want to build that foreground image. Then we bring in the next section, which would be the midground, and we put that here. And if we needed to animate a character going behind the midground to the background, we can do that. We can stick characters between these images. So we've still got layerability of all of our elements. So now we're going to bring in the next one, which is the foreground. So near ground. And we just bring that down. So as you can see, we've got our scene building happening very easily here. And we just need to produce in what we want beforehand so that we get everything as we want it. Oops. And of course we can alter things, move them back and forth here to get exactly the scene we want to create on the random fly. So it takes time, of course, but it's not as much time as if we created each of these elements alone. So now we want to go with, let's go with the blades of grass, because those are large. So we're going to stick those. Oh, I imported them in between, so let's put them on the mid-ground there. So there we got a bunch of grasses growing in the mid-ground. So now we're going to go on top of this and bring in the next image. And we want, oh, I didn't bring in our clouds. Let's bring in our clouds. So there's our clouds. And I've got multiple different kinds of clouds. I didn't show you the clouds object, but I will probably finish this project with that because they're not really done yet. I just captured this as a static image without having actually done anything other than create the clouds. So here we've got our clouds. We can bring them in front of the mountains if we want, and again we can animate them floating across the sky, whatever we need. So let's just grab that much right there. I don't think we need more than that. That's a good scene there. So now let's bring in the next element. Oh, I don't want a vector, sorry. Too used to creating. So we're going to bring in the next image. So let's go with debris. So we got all this debris. We can bring this down, and it's only going to be in the front level. So we're going to keep it there like that. But say we wanted debris on the second level, we can duplicate this, and we simply bring down the duplicate in between the near ground and the far ground, and bring it on up, and it's behind the first set there. And let's just scroll it on over so we get, quite a bit of different. So it looks like I could have done better on my foreground, my near ground here, but that's all right. We can draw it in, so it doesn't really matter. So there we got debris. I think the debris should actually go behind the blades of grass. So there we go. That's better. So now we can see that the grasses are behind the debris, or in front of the debris. And then we've got some more debris out here in the front, and even at the edge of the ground there. So now we bring in the next element. It's the sprouts, I believe. So, oh, sand. Let's bring in the sand. We got all that sand. So we're going to bring that down here. So I think our front one, our near ground, that needs to go down like that a bit. Yeah. So now we've got our near ground, and I think the sand, that's kind of large. So let's go ahead and make our sands tinier grains. So we'll bring it down like that, and there we go. I like that better. So now we got our sandy ground. Let's go ahead and bring our view up. So we're looking at the very bottom of the scene here. There we go. And that's looking fairly decent for me. So now we can bring in the next image, which is the sprouts. And we just place those. Whoops, I didn't want to move everything. So I'm still on the camera, but I need to go to the sprouts and to the sprouts layer. So now I can bring the sprouts down and place those in my scene wherever I want them. Right there. Again, if we want sprouts in the background, we just duplicate this, and then we move it into the next with the other debris. And then what we should do is, because it's in the distance, we should shrink it down a little. And then all those parts that show up in the background there, those are the sprouts, are smaller because they're farther off in the distance. And we need to do the same thing for the debris in the distance. So let's go ahead and shrink that debris down, and then move it on over for a full scene. So now we've got some debris in our background, and some sprouts in the background and in the foreground. it doesn't look like we're repeating the same object over and over again. And now we're ready to start. We can actually now capture this if we wanted and make our static background. And oh, we didn't bring in the sticks. Let's go ahead and bring in the sticks, the final object. So there we go. And again, we make sure we're picking up the layer for the sticks, and we can place our sticks. Oh, and we put it in the background. That's fine. Let's shrink them down so they're in the background distance. And we don't want them up in the air or on the mountains in the background. So we want to be careful how far we set them. And we can rotate this if we need. We go, oh well, let's get the ones that are on the other side. So again, everything you do gives you more and more variability, and so we can now duplicate that and bring it up in front and make it larger, and now we've got sticks up in the front. And let's go ahead and rotate it back the other way, so we've only got a few. And there we go. So now we can render our scene, which is ready to now have our characters put in front of to create our story. And we can then create individual plants and sprouts and whatever we need for when we have the characters going inside and out of things. Or we can actually use this, because this is very little memory here. If we use this in our animation, we can now bring in a bunch of characters and animate them in the scene, and we can use the parallax so that the scene is moving sideways. So as you can see, the background is moving there. But we shouldn't be moving everything at the same speed. That's not how reality is. Generally, things that are closest to us are moving faster. So if we start at 1 and set the sprouts at their correct timing, and then we jump to 2000 and we move the plants on over further than what they were moving with the regular movement. So now when we move our scene, those little plants in the front are moving. And we can do that with each of these images so that they're moving with each layer moving faster the closer it is to you, giving you a parallax view. Now you're going, well, look we don't have any ground here. What are we going to do about that? Well, that's pretty easy. You simply create a new layer at wherever you want. So I'd say here's near ground, so we're going to create it right here. Go vector. Oh, we need to be in construction layer. So now we go vector, and we're going to just call that vector stage, because this is the stage area where our character is going to actually be interacting. This is the front part. So we now draw, we pick up, if we don't have, we're not going to have a style here. So we're going to create a new style. We're going to call it ground 1. And then we're going to copy that ground 1 color right there. And we'll pick up the brown at the edge. And now we can just draw our own new piece of ground that connects with the other ground. And if we simply hide the edge at this edge, then there will be no difference from here forward. So now we can bring our camera down if we wanted and get more of this scenery here like this. So let's start at 1. We come into our scene, we'll jump up to 120, and we'll say, okay, well, we want to go up and see that moon. We'll get it to right there. And we go to 500. And at 500, we're gonna zoom back down like this to see more of this front and ground there. So now we can play our video, and here's what we would get. So you can see that sand is still too large. We need to do something about that. But there are, you know, just a few sand particles laying there. We don't need them. We go, oh, I don't like that sand. Let's just get rid of it. Get rid of it. So that's how we can build a fresh new scene in about an hour, basically. It take a little bit more planning than just simply grabbing, you know, throwing out the details, but this allows us to create a very functional scene. We can stick characters in here now and animate them, and we don't have to worry about all this background stuff. And you know, you want the clouds moving in the sky, just like we're doing with the sprouts. You simply change their beginning and end. So let's start here at 1, and we go to the clouds, and here they are. And let's make them go the opposite direction to what we're panning. So we're going to jump now to 2000, and instead of having the clouds just continue to the left, we're going to drag, whoops, I don't want to drag all of them. So we're going to grab the layer for the clouds. We're going to drag the clouds all to the right, just like that. So now let's see how that plays out. So there we go. And you can see the clouds are moving to the right. We're panning through the scene. We could be following a character, whatever we need. And as you can see, there's not a lot of time lapse here taking place because these images are static. They don't have to be dynamically active. And there, clouds went in front of the moon, so pretty good effect. So yeah, the clouds could be better, and they will be. So that's how we create a scene, random, on the go, having a new scene each time if we need it, or reusing an old one. It doesn't matter. We can create new ones very quickly now. All of the elements are there. We simply put together exactly what we want in our final project. So now our clouds are moving pretty much with our panning camera. And a good effect there would have been to stop the camera. So if we go to the end here and we look here at the camera, let's grab this camera here and just move it way over here so the camera stops moving but the scenery doesn't. So here, and boom, the camera stops and the clouds keep moving over the mountains. And of course we can make the mountain, or make the clouds do whatever we want. Mountains too, but let's bring the clouds down like that. And now let's play that. So here's our final look. Let's get it as close to the scene there. There we go. And that line you see is just the edge of the clouds there. So let's go to layer 1 there. You won't see any of that. And so there we go, the clouds are moving over top of the mountains, between the mountains and the rest of the scene. And we can put another layer of clouds with different looking clouds and all of that. So hopefully I've taught you something that you can do to make yourself a lot more effective animator by making your backgrounds easily creatable. Once you've created a major background, you can then use portions of that to create individual scenes. So now let's stop this and we'll go to the clouds. So we're going to open up clouds because I have not done them yet. So here are the clouds. I don't need the picture anymore. So I've got 6 different cloud groups here. So I can turn this one on, turn this one on, turn this one on, turn this one on, this one on, and this one on. So there's my 6 different groups of clouds. But you can see that's kind of hard to see on a transparent background. So I created this so that we can actually see what we're going to produce for the clouds. So say, okay, I want to use those clouds and those clouds. And now I go to the scene or set, and now I've got controls for those clouds, just as I've done with everything else. We're going to be able to move each set left and right, up and down, and change the thickness of the edge. So let's start with set 1. So we'll turn set 2 off. So this is how I build these scenes. So first I created all these clouds, and as you can see, there's not a whole lot of them, but there's plenty. Again, none of them overlap each other. The edges, I've used a fluffy edge for the stroke on the clouds, and you can go in and change the cloud values here. So I've got 3 different types of clouds. I've got my sky and then a dark shadow. And so if you want to change any of those, it changes for all of that are under that group. So these clouds are more or less the kind of cartoon drawing type clouds. But then I tried to get a little more serious. So I've got these clouds here. So you can see the cloud in there, but with the fuzzy edge, changing the width, I've been able to create, fluffy, puffy clouds. And then, of course, I put dark shadows under some of them for rain clouds coming. And then set 5 is a little bit larger, and again, with dark clouds underneath. We're going to go to 1, and we want to go to the set. And we're going to grab that bone, which we've got, which is up and down. And we're going to turn set 1 on so we can see it. And then we're going to create an action for that bone in set. So it is set 1 up and down. So first we go in and we rotate the bone down. Now I have constraints on my bones. I constrain them at 32 minus 32. So let me go ahead and go show you that before we go any further. So we set the angle constraints to minus 32 to 32. And then we orient it however we want. So these all are set for minus 32, 32, but they're all starting in a different position. And their starting position value is 0. So when we're looking at the bone constraints and we say, well, we're going from minus 32 to 32, well, the very center point is 0. But that is not the way the timeline works out. So what we have here is from minus 32 to 32 gives us 65. But in reality, our timeline starts at 1 and there is no 0. So we're going to use 64 and we're going to forget that there's a 0. But the 0 is important because that is where it can release whatever that bone does to any other bone activity. It's kind of hard to explain. But when you assign actions to any element, if you don't set it to reset back to your static position when your bone is at 0, then you can't manipulate it with another bone without them interfering with each other. But if you want them to work concurrently together, you have to reset to 0 the static image that you started with. So here we have our set 1 clouds, and as you can see, they're static image. They stretch from way over here to way over here. We are basically in the center of that full range. Over here we have a little bit of clouds. Over here we have a lot of clouds. That's all there is to it. The set 2 is reversed of that, and then there's shadows underneath. So now what we want to do is, we've rotated this bone down at 1, and then we're going to go to 64. So let's zoom this in a little bit. Oops. And we're going to go to 64 because we have minus 32 to 32. So we're going to go to 64 and move this lever all the way up. So we got to go back to the set, grab the transform bone, and then move it all the way to up. So when it's at 64, the bone will be up. When it's at 1, the bone will be down. And it moves all the way in between, giving us 64 specific positions. That means we can stop that bone in 64 different places. If we were to move these endpoints to 128, then we would have 128 positions that we can move this bone. Gives us twice as many positions, which gives us finer control. So I've chosen 64 as a easy medium. It's easy to give. Half of 64 is 32, which will be our 0 point for the bone. So at 32, we want our clouds to be back to what they were before we did anything. But at 1, when that lever's down, we want the clouds to come down. Now we can do this multiple ways. We can grab each of the clouds and move them down one at a time. We can grab all the clouds at once using G, and now we can grab all the clouds and move them up and down as a group by using T, and that's what I'm going to do. But we could also jump over here and use the layer of set 1. So we would be moving the layer itself, not the objects inside of the layer. Okay, there's a difference. We want to move the objects inside the layer. When you move the objects inside the layer in an action, that action will function even in the construction layer. When you use layer movements in an action, those actions will not animate until you get into the timeline. So that is why it's better to change things in an action as individual objects rather than as a layer. But there are times when you want to use both, or where the layer is the best option. For instance, right here we have all these individual objects. As I move them up and down, the program is keeping track of each one of them individually. Whereas if I move just the layer, the only thing it's tracking is the container that holds all of those objects. So we're going to go to 1, and then we're going to grab T, and then shift and drag down, and we're just going to bring the center cloud right in the center there, just off the screen, so that we can capture a background with no clouds on it. And we'll do that simply by sliding them left at this point. Some of these clouds are going to still be in the scene. So now we jump to 64, and it already jumped back to the center for 32 because we had reset there. But now we go to 64, and we simply drag them up, and we're just going to go to right there, where we've got a couple of clouds are just barely leaving our camera scene there. So you can have clouds going across the top of the sky, partially cut off. So now we go back to 32. Everything should be right back in the center, but just to be sure, with everything selected, and I lost the connection here, so I'm going to G to grab on my keyboard, grab everything, T to transform, and then we're just going to reset here, and you can see nothing changed, so it is perfectly set. So we go back to the main line now, and we can go back to our set and in our construction frame, and we can manipulate the bone to move the clouds down and up. So we can now put them as high or low in the sky as we want. And of course we're going to turn off this sky when we capture them because we want a transparent background so that the clouds can flow over the mountains and over the hills or whatever we want, or behind the mountains and hills. So now we're going to create the left and right function of this set one. So we need to be on set, we need to be in construction layer, we need to have a bone tool selected. It doesn't matter which bone here tool we use, just as long as one of these bone tools are selected. And then we select this bone and create a new action. And it takes the name of the bone. That's the only way it can work. If you change the name of the action or you change the name of the bone, you don't change the other, you break the connection. So it does have to be there. So now we're going to take the transform bone tool, and we're going to rotate the bone all the way to our minimal position, which is 1, out of -32 to +32. So that gives us 64 as our top value. So we're going to jump to 64 and then rotate the bone to 64. And we can simply test to make sure that it is moving, that we've got it set properly. So now at 64, we're going to want these clouds to all move all the way to the right. So we go back to set 1. We've got them selected. We hit T, then Shift, and drag everything as far to the right as I want it to go. And I think what we'll do is we'll bring it all the way to where we've got some heavy clouds with a clear cloud next to it. So let's put the edge right in the center there. There. Right there. Okay, and then we want to go back to 1, and we want to move it the other way. And as you can see, it automatically jumps back to the static position of reset when we're at 1 because we haven't done anything yet. So as long as we haven't done anything, it's going to revert to 1 at the same as 0. Okay, but we're going to change that. So we're going to pick up the 1 and we're going to hold Shift and we're going to drag it as far left as we can go till we've got just the 1 cloud showing at the center. So I'm going to pick this up and move it over to right there. Perfect. Close enough. So now we've got our range, and then we're going to go back to 32. And at 32, it should be very close to being centered, but to ensure that it's centered and released, we have to hit reset. And this is true with the layer or the points. And so you saw it did jump a bit there. And so that means our left and right are not identical offsets from center. And that's why we want to use reset at center, so that we're always returning to the same static position as 0. And as you can see, there is no change jumping from 32 to 0. And of course now at 1 we're all the way left, and if we test it, we can slide the clouds all the way left or right into 64 different positions. Okay, so it wouldn't be a good animation movement because it would be very jerky, but as for capturing a single screen, which is what the purpose of this is, that's perfect. So we go back to our main line. So now we can double check by going to set, going to the construction layer, and then transforming tool, and see if we can move our clouds up and down and left and right. So, and when you want to move better, just move further away from your control bone. This gives you a lot better control over exactly what you want done. So you want to move it, if you're up here close to the bone, it's going to go pretty jerky. Okay, but if you go farther away, then you can get that individual each 1 point out of the 64. We could literally count the positions here, you know, by moving one at a time. So we've got our up and down, we've got our left and right. So now we can adjust those clouds to be anywhere in that scene we want. Now we want to go back to set, back to construction, back to the bone select, back to the main line, and we're going to select the final bone, which is set one edge. So we're going to create the action for that. And then again, we want to set the minimal position. So we zoom in and we rotate the bone to the minimal position. We jump to 64 and move it to the maximum position. That is minus 32 on the bottom and 32 on the top. And when we're on 32 on the timeline, that's 0 for the bone. You can use 0 to 64, but then your reset point would be at your 1, because you will be setting your 0 for the bone as your 1 point on your timeline. So you can use any kind of angles you want to do this, but I prefer to use 64 points, minus 32 to 32. It allows me to place bones base to base like this to create star patterns and have 64 actions for each bone, and that gives me a lot of manipulability. What we want to do now is create the change of the edges of these clouds. So you can, when you look in close, you can see that the bottoms are thinner on most of them, with the heavy thickness of the edge on others. So if we go look at my style that I'm using, so we've got cloud 1 here, and we're actually using a pattern on the stroke. So if we go in here, you can see that I've selected this pattern here for the stroke edge, and we can adjust the angle, how it looks, and make it, you know, customized, how often we see the thicknesses. So you can see how the clouds are changing in the background. So I got to what I wanted, and then I drew my clouds, and then going into the construction layer and the objects, each point has a different thickness. So if we hit T so that we can grab a single point, so we're going to just grab this point right here. Let me undo, I don't want to move things. So we're just going to grab this one point right there, and we can see that if we hit W, that the width of that right there is 100% in relation to how it was drawn. All right, you have to start somewhere, because it's a vector image. We can zoom in very close and see more detail, or zoom very far out and we still keep the detail whether we're zoomed in or not. That's the beauty of using vector images, because you can get a very high quality. So if we go to this point, you're going to see that it's 174%. We got to go into cloud, and so it's actually 50. I set the width of the clouds to 50 because we're drawing at very high quality, very high capture point. I want a very high background image capture so that our quality is very good. So the better quality you do at this point, the more memory it takes, but you get the best outcome. So anyway, we've got the cloud with variant edge sizes here, and as we change that using this bone right here, we're going to want those to maintain the exact look that they currently got, so that as we change things, this 100%, wherever it was that we were looking at, I believe it was over here, that 100% will become 300%, and the 174 will be 3 times 174. So it will do all of them together as a set. So we're going to do that now. We're going to go ahead and go back to the base set. We're going to grab our bone tool, make sure we're in the construction layer. We're going to grab the bone for changing the edge of the clouds, and then we're going to go into actions, and we're going to create a new action for set one edge. Alright, so now all of those edges are drawn with their particular edges, and we're going to grab all of those. So G to grab, we highlight all of it, then we hit W for width. Now we're looking at the total width. When we look at this value up here, we're looking at the total width average of every cloud as it is right now. And what we want to do is preserve that as the center point of our bone when we're at the 0. So we need to make sure that we've set our bone first of all, which I think we forgot to do. So let's go to the bone. We got to go to the set layer. We're going to grab the transform bone, and we're going to bring it all the way down. Now this is actually positive 32. So normally I'd be over here at 64 in this direction. But we don't have to do that. We can do anything we want. So I'm going to use 1, and it's going to be down, and that's going to be in the bone values a positive 32. And then we're going to jump to 64, which will be our up direction, and we're just going to move this bone to the far left, which in reality would be minus 32, but for us it's going to be 64. That's the beauty of being able to assign a bone with bone constraints of a range of 64 degrees, and we can either we could set that to just 24 actions within that 64 degrees. We would then be able to move this bone, but it would only make changes at 24 positions. Or we can jump it up to 100 or 128, as that is double of 64, or 256, which would be double of 128. And the more we double the size of where we're going here, the finer control we get. But as I said earlier, 64 is what I have found that works really well for me for most everything. As long as I'm not trying to use it to move something across the screen smoothly. This is only for moving something from one point to the other so that Moho can handle all the calculation in between, making everything better. So when we're all the way up, we're going to want to make all these clouds thicker. When we're all the way down, we're going to make them thinner. And at 32, we want to reset. But here's the problem with that. When you're here and you choose W, there's no reset. We cannot reset back to our static position. Is once we've selected all of these objects and we've got it with selected, we're going to click in here and we're just going to move it to the right and then back to where it was. So it was at 72. Let's get it back to 72 if we can. I keep going past it. There we go. So now we have our static view is the same as 0. There should be no difference. And let's double check and make sure that we are indeed the same. Alright, so yeah, so at 0 our value is 72,174. At 32 our value is 72.174. So now we want to make this thicker, and you might think, oh, let's just go double, right? So let's just jump up here and change this to 144, double of 72, and we press enter. But look what happened to my clouds. All of the edges are now uniform. There is no difference from one point to the next. If I click on it, you can see under width, if I hit W, it's at 144. They're all approximately 144. There's 142. but we've lost that really beautiful variance that I had worked hard to create. So we're going to Control Z and undo that 144, 72.174. All right, we're back to normal. So if we double check, 0 and 32 is no change, but we lost our point here. So let's click here. There, now it's set because we're in width. Now we're going to go to now we're going to go to 64, and we do not want to enter a value here. We want to maintain our sides. So what we do is we just click down here in our work area and drag to the right. And as you can see, they're all expanding and they're keeping that variance that I had programmed in. So we can watch our numbers and go to 144 and let go, and that's double the edge thickness that we were before. And then we jump down to 1. And again, we can, if we enter a number here, we're going to convert all of them at the same, to the same basic value, within obviously a point or two. But instead, we just want to click here and drag. And I don't think we want to go all the way to 0. Let's just go to 0.5. And that looks as if those edges are all gone. But if you come in close, you can still see we still have our variance. So now we can exit back to our set. We can exit to our main line. And we can grab our manipulate bone tool. And we're going to come in here and look at the cloud thickness bone, and we're going to move it up. Clouds get thicker. We're going to move it down. They get thinner and become basically just hand-drawn images. So no personality. So there we go. That's how we make the sides of something thicker in scale to what we drew it at, instead of jumping up in and punching in the numbers. Sometimes punching in the numbers is great, gives you a lot of absolute control. Other times you want to have that freehand effect. So there we go. And now I'm going to do that to each of these other sets. And as you can see, each set, it looks a little different. So basically this was the same as the first set of clouds. And you can see the resemblance between them. They're reverse of each other. And then what I did was I took the magnet and altered it. So they're not identically different, opposite, because I took the magnet in here and moved this stuff around. So if we zoom in here, you can see my little bitty magnet, and you hold Alt and drag left or right to change the size of your magnet tool, and you can just pick up and change the shape of a cloud just like that without having to change everything about it. So like we want to go like this here. So, and because I haven't set any of this in stone, it's possible to come in here and say, I'm tired of seeing those same old clouds. I'm going to make these a little bit different because I've seen that one cloud 5 times now in the videos. Let's get it and alter it so next time it doesn't look like that, so that we continue to vary our different options for what we're doing. So don't be afraid to come in and use the magnet tool and make changes, and you can make it quite large to make a large number of changes easily. So you can do that. And anyway, so now I'm going to do each of these, but I'm not going to put you through watching all of that. And that's how we finish off setting up our various background elements. So we also have flowers. I'm opening up this project that Jonathan is working on. I did help him with it a bit, but just to basically show him some tricks. But background, I made the background, he put in all the flowers, and so he's gonna have Rojo be flying to all these flowers. And as you can see, each of these flowers is an individual image. So we could turn each one of them off if we needed to. But what he's going to do, he's going to bring Rojo in to fly around each of them. And then we'll use the camera to follow Rojo be up close. But we've got this whole background that we don't have to worry about. Well, is the camera going to catch something off that we don't need? You know, so we've got this background and we've got the flower bed. And so now Rojo Bee can fly over each of these flowers. Of course, it's not a real flower bed. It's just a splash screen for our game, Pollen Picker, which is coming out September or October of 2023. So take a look at our website, dangeraware.org, and see if Pollen Picker is out there yet. If it's after September that you're watching this. But anyway, each of these images take up so little memory that if I need to render this image right now, it's not going to take that long. Boom, we're done. Because all of those images are already rendered at high quality. And honestly, I think at this level, we should probably make the background scene a little fuzzy. Let's try fuzzing it out at level 3. And so we're going to hit apply, blurring it, and then render that. And yeah, that brings out the flowers up close a little better. So that's how you can create a quick background and do whatever you want with it internally. And so I'll now go work on all these other cloud sets, and I'll maybe post the results in a future video. So there's the background so you can see the various clouds, and they're all going to work just like the front clouds, where the edges can be thicker or thinner, and that also does the dark shadow thicker and thinner at the same time, or it will. That's my plan. So thank you for watching. Please come again and see our next video. Hit that like, subscribe, and spread the word. We need all the help we can get. If you're an animator and you'd like to help us with our animations, or you'd like to just create an animation and offer it to us and say, hey, I like what you guys are doing, and here's an animation I created about, you know, calling out abuse awareness, you know. So if you've got an idea that would call out abuse without showing any actual abuse, so we don't want you to like show a fist fight or anything like that, but you can show all the way up to the point where the person starts to swing, you know, because that's the precursor, and that's what we need to stop, and that's what we need to call out. So at that point, we would want like our super aware kid to step in and say, hey, this is not the right way to be, blah, blah, blah. So if you're an animator and you're getting anything out of what I'm teaching you through what I'm learning, please help us. Make a video. It doesn't have to be long. It could be 1 minute long, just like the one at the beginning of this video. And I'll probably play that again for the credits here at the end. So you guys have a wonderful day. Visit https://dangeraware.org. See our contests, play our games, look at our comics of the Begillagers. If you have something of your own you'd like to contribute to help us educate the young and vulnerable against the precursors to abuse, please jump in and join us. Give us what you've got. We'll put it on our site if it helps teach the young and vulnerable how to protect themselves. Calling out abuse, teaching personal rights. That's what we're after. So have a wonderful day, and thanks again.
Stranger could be the one that lives next door. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that a stranger, could be the one that you adore. Danger, danger. Danger, danger.